The night was quiet, and the small town lay under a blanket of silence. The streets were empty, and only the soft hum of insects could be heard in the distance. The moon shone brightly above, casting silver light on the rooftops and trees. It looked like any other normal evening, peaceful and calm. But for Daniel, this night felt different. He walked along the narrow road that cut through the forest. His backpack hung on one shoulder, and his tired steps echoed softly against the ground. He had walked this path many times before, but tonight, he sensed something strange in the air. It was heavier, colder, and filled with a quiet tension. Daniel was an ordinary young man. He was not a soldier, not a hero, and not even someone who believed in strange things. He worked at a small repair shop in town and spent most of his evenings walking home alone. But deep inside, he carried a restless feeling that something unusual was waiting for him. As he walked, he stopped suddenly, in the distance, above the tall trees. He saw a faint glow. At first he thought it might be a plane passing by or maybe the reflection of a star. But the light grew brighter, and it began to move in a way that no plane could. It floated, then darted sideways, then stopped again in the dark sky. Daniel's heart started to beat faster. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was imagining things. But the light was real, and now it was spreading into different colors, blue, red, and green. It looked alive, almost like it was breathing. The forest around him grew silent. The insects stopped their song, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Daniel felt his skin crawl as he realized that the night was no longer normal. Something was watching. Something was near. Then it happened. A deep sound shook the air, low and heavy, like thunder rolling across the sky. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his throat. The glowing light above him began to expand, and a strange beam of energy touched the treetops. The leaves rustled and glowed as if they were burning without fire. Daniel wanted to run, but his legs felt weak. His mind screamed at him to turn back toward the town, but his eyes were locked on the strange display in the sky. He felt like a small ant standing under the gaze of something powerful, something beyond human understanding. Suddenly, movement in the shadows caught his attention. He turned his head and saw a figure stumbling through the trees. It was small, fragile, and moving as if in pain. At first he thought it was a lost child. But as the figure stepped into the pale moonlight, Daniel gasped. It was not a child, not a human. The figure had glowing silver eyes that reflected the moonlight. Its skin shimmered faintly as if made of soft crystal, and its clothes looked torn and strange. Daniel could not believe what he was seeing. An alien, standing right there in the middle of the forest. The alien girl looked frightened. Her steps were uneven, and her head turned again and again as if she was running from something. Daniel's fear mixed with shock. He wanted to shout, to ask who or what she was, but before he could say a word, the ground shook again. Behind her, deep in the forest, dark shapes began to appear. They were tall, thin, and moving with terrifying speed. Their bodies blended with the shadows, but their eyes glowed with a cold, cruel light. Daniel knew at once that these were not humans. They were something else, and they were hunting her. The alien girl fell to her knees, breathing hard. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct told him to run away, to hide, to pretend none of this was happening. But he could not move. He stood frozen, staring at the girl who looked so weak and helpless. Then she looked up, and her glowing eyes met his. For a moment, time stopped. In her eyes he saw fear, but also hope, a silent plea for help. She was not just a strange creature from another world. She was a living being, desperate to survive. The shadows grew closer, and the terrible sound of their steps filled the forest. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had never been a fighter, never been a hero, but now he stood at a crossroad. He could turn away and save himself, or he could do something that might change his life forever. The night was no longer just a quiet evening. It had become the beginning of something far bigger. Daniel did not know what was coming, but deep inside he felt that his life, and maybe the fate of this strange girl, had just been tied together. and above them the glowing light in the sky pulsed brighter, watching, waiting, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Daniel's breath came fast as he stood frozen. In the shadows, the strange girl with glowing eyes struggled to stand, her knees weak, her arms trembling as if the weight of the world pressed upon her small body. She looked fragile, and yet there was something unearthly about her presence, something that made the night itself seem alive. Daniel took a step closer, his shoes crunched against dry leaves, and the sound seemed too loud in the silence. The alien girl flinched and turned her head toward him. Her silver eyes shone brightly in the dark, shimmering like liquid stars. For a moment, he thought she might run from him, but instead she simply stared. Her gaze was sharp, but full of fear. She seemed unsure if he was friend or foe. Daniel slowly lifted his hands, showing they were empty. He whispered softly, his voice trembling, "I won't hurt you." Even as he spoke, he felt foolish. How could she understand his words? How could a being from another world know what he meant? But something in his tone must have reached her, because the girl did not move away. Her breathing was shallow, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Behind them, the forest groaned with unnatural noises, low hums and clicking sounds. The dark figures were closing in, and time was slipping away. Daniel's heart raced. He could not explain it, but he felt pulled toward her, drawn by some invisible force. It was not only curiosity, it was not only shock at seeing something so strange. It was the raw instinct to protect, the same instinct that would make him grab a child's hand in danger or pull a stranger from a fire. The girl's lips parted slightly. She tried to speak, but her voice came out broken and strange, a mixture of sounds that made no sense to his ears. Still, Daniel could feel the meaning behind it, a desperate plea. She was asking for help. The glow in the sky above flickered again, casting sharp beams of light across the forest. The abductors stepped into view now, tall shapes with long arms and faces hidden in shadow. Their bodies seemed to bend unnaturally, and their movements were too smooth, too precise. They carried strange tools that hummed like electricity. Daniel felt his knees weaken. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused. He looked at the girl again, her silver eyes locked on his, shimmering with both fear and hope. Something inside him snapped. He could not leave her. He could not turn away. He reached out his hand. His voice was firmer this time. "Come with me." She stared at him, hesitated for a breath, and then placed her trembling hand into his. Her skin was cool, almost like touching smooth glass, but the grip was strong despite her weakness. Together, they moved through the forest. Daniel pulled her along, glancing back at the shadows following them. The abductors made no sound, but their glowing eyes cut through the trees like knives. Daniel's legs burned as he ran, his breath short and heavy. The girl stumbled often, but each time he caught her, refusing to let go. Branches scratched against his arms, and the ground twisted beneath his feet. He pushed forward, not knowing where he was going, only knowing that he had to move. The abductors were faster, and he could feel them closing in. The night itself seemed to bend around them, the stars above hidden by the strange glow in the sky. Suddenly, the girl tugged at his arm. She pointed toward a fallen log half covered in moss and leaves. Without words, Daniel understood. They slid behind it, pressing low to the ground. His heart thundered in his chest and sweat dripped down his face. The abductors stopped nearby. Their tall frames loomed like shadows of death. One of them leaned close, scanning the area with a strange device that buzzed and flashed. Daniel held his breath, afraid even the sound of his heartbeat would give them away. The girl squeezed his hand tightly, her glowing eyes wide with terror. For endless seconds the creatures searched. Then, without warning, they moved again, their long bodies gliding deeper into the trees. The hum of their weapons faded slightly. Daniel did not relax. He knew this was only a moment's grace. They were hunters, and hunters never gave up easily. The girl let out a weak sound, half sigh, half cry. She leaned against him, exhausted. Daniel looked at her, and though fear still gripped him, he found himself whispering, "It's okay, I'll keep you safe." He did not know why he said it. He did not even know if it was true, but something inside him demanded that promise. The night was no longer Daniel's ordinary world. He was standing between two paths. On one side was safety, the chance to leave this strange creature behind and return to his normal life. On the other side was danger, a danger so great that it could cost him everything. And yet, holding her trembling hand in his, Daniel already knew his choice. He could not abandon her. Above them, the sky shifted. The glowing light grew brighter, pulsing like a living heart. The abductor's shadows moved again in the distance, searching, closing in. Daniel's jaw tightened. He did not understand why this was happening, why the universe had chosen him, but one thing was clear. This night was no longer his own. It belonged to something far greater, and he was now part of it. The forest was dark, but Daniel could feel the presence of the hunters all around. Every tree, every shadow seemed alive, as if the night itself had turned against him. The girl clung to his arm, her silver eyes wide with fear. Her small frame trembled, but her grip was firm. Daniel's lungs burned with every breath, yet he forced his legs to move. He had never been an athlete, never trained for danger, but now survival gave him strength. Behind them, the clicking sounds of the abductors echoed through the trees, steady, inhuman, and full of purpose. He glanced back, and his stomach dropped. The creatures were closer now, tall and thin, their bodies bending unnaturally as they moved. Their glowing eyes cut through the darkness, and their strange weapons pulsed with blue light. They did not walk like men. They glided, smooth and silent, as if the earth itself carried them forward. Daniel pulled the girl tighter to him. His heart screamed with panic, but his mind sharpened. With focus, he had to think. He had to find a way. They could not outrun these beings forever. They needed something else. The girl suddenly stumbled, nearly falling. Daniel caught her and pulled her up. Her strength was fading fast, and he realized she had been injured before he even saw her. There was a faint glow around her side, where her torn clothes revealed strange wounds. It looked like burns, but the fire that caused them was not of this world. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew she could not run much longer, and yet the hunters were relentless. They had tracked her across the stars, perhaps across entire worlds, and they would not stop now. Their movements were precise, confident, as if they already believed victory was near. Suddenly a piercing sound filled the night. It was sharp and metallic, making Daniel's ears ring. He stumbled and covered his head. The girl cried out softly, holding her ears. The abductors were using some kind of signal, a sound meant to disorient Daniel's vision blurred, but his fear forced him forward. He dragged the girl with him, searching desperately for cover. His eyes caught a hollow beneath a fallen tree, wide enough for them to crawl inside. He pulled her down, and together they pressed into the damp earth. The sound grew louder, vibrating through his skull. Daniel clenched his teeth. The abductors' glowing forms moved closer, scanning the forest. With their strange devices, their weapons pulsed, releasing thin beams of blue light that sliced across the ground. Every place the light touched, the earth smoked and burned. Daniel held his breath. His heart thundered so loudly he feared they would hear it. The girl leaned against him, her small body shaking, her glowing eyes dimmed with exhaustion. She whispered, something in her strange language. The sound weak but filled with sorrow. Daniel did not understand, but he felt the meaning. She believed they would not survive. His jaw tightened. No, he thought, not while I'm still breathing. The abductors stopped just steps away, their long arms stretched, their strange devices scanning the earth. Daniel pressed lower into the soil. He could smell the metallic scent of their presence, cold and sharp like iron. Then, one of them turned its head, its glowing eyes fixed directly on the hollow. Daniel's blood turned to ice. He knew they had been found. The creature stepped forward. Its long fingers reached out, and the weapon in its hand glowed brighter. Daniel's muscles tensed. He had no weapons, no plan, only the desperate instinct to fight. He glanced at the girl. She looked back at him with wide, terrified eyes. And in that moment, Daniel felt a surge of resolve. He grabbed a thick branch lying in the dirt. It was crude, heavy, and useless against such beings. But it was all he had. As the creature leaned closer, Daniel swung with all his strength. The branch cracked against its arm. The weapon slipped from its grip, landing with a hiss against the ground. The creature let out a shrill cry, sharp and unnatural. Its body bent backward, glowing sparks flashing from its limb. Daniel did not wait. He pulled the girl up and ran, dragging her away as fast as his legs could carry them. Behind them, the forest exploded with light. The other abductors rushed forward, their eyes burning brighter. Their voices rose in clicks and hums that echoed like thunder. Daniel's chest ached, but he pushed harder. Each step felt like running through fire, but the girl's trembling hand in his gave him strength. They burst into a clearing. The moonlight spilled across the open ground, and for a moment, Daniel thought they were safe, but the shadows stretched long behind them. The abductors were not far. Their glowing forms moved like predators, patient and unshaken. Daniel stood in the center of the clearing, his chest heaving. The girl leaned against him, barely able to stand. He looked around, searching for any path, any chance, but the forest was closing in and the hunters were everywhere. The night was alive with danger. The abductors were closer than ever, and Daniel realized something. He was no longer just running. He was no longer just a witness. He had become their obstacle, the one thing standing between the girl and her captors, and they would not forgive him for it. Daniel stood in the clearing, sweat dripping from his face. His chest rose and fell as he tried to catch his breath. The alien girl leaned weakly against his side, her glowing eyes dim with exhaustion. Behind them, the forest was alive with shadows. The abductors were closing in, their tall forms cutting through the trees with unnatural grace. Fear gripped Daniel's heart. He wanted to run. He wanted to vanish into the night and pretend this was not his fight. But when he looked down at the girl, trembling and weak, something inside him shifted. She was helpless, and yet she had trusted him. She had placed her strange hand into his, and in that moment he knew he could not abandon her. The abductors stepped into the clearing, their glowing weapons humming. Blue light pulsed from their devices. Leaving the smell of burned air, Daniel could feel the heat against his skin even before they fired. Their eyes glowed brighter, cold and merciless. These were not soldiers. These were hunters, and they saw the girl as prey. Daniel glanced at the fallen branch still clutched in his hand. It was nothing compared to their weapons, a toy against fire. Yet he tightened his grip. His mind screamed that he was only human, that he had no chance. But his heart whispered something else. Courage was not about winning. Courage was about refusing to give up. He placed the girl gently on the ground, crouching so their eyes met. Her lips moved, whispering sounds he could not understand, but her eyes told him everything. She did not want him to fight. She was afraid for him, afraid he would be destroyed. Daniel smiled faintly, though his fear was heavy. "I'll protect you," he whispered, his voice firm. The abductors moved closer. One raised its weapon, the glow swelling like a storm. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between the girl and the monsters. His legs shook, his hands trembled, but he did not step aside. He lifted the branch like a sword, ready to strike. The first beam of energy shot toward him. Daniel rolled aside, the ground hissing where the blast struck. He charged forward, swinging the branch with all his strength. It cracked against the creature's torso. The sound was small, but the sudden move caught it off guard. The weapon slipped for a moment, and the creature staggered back. The others hissed, their strange voices clicking like knives. They advanced together, their long limbs spread wide. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He could not fight them all, but he could buy time. He could give the girl a chance to escape. He picked up a rock and hurled it at one of the hunters. It struck its shoulder, sparks flashing. The creature turned its glowing eyes on him, enraged. Daniel felt a surge of defiance. He was only human, but he would not kneel. The girl behind him suddenly raised her hand. Her silver eyes flickered with light. A faint pulse rippled through the clearing. The hunters staggered, their weapons flickering. Daniel turned in shock. She had power, but she was too weak to use it fully. Still, Even a spark of her strength forced the abductors to hesitate. Daniel understood then if he could hold them off, if he could give her even a little more time, she might be able to fight back. That was enough. He tightened his grip on the branch and stepped forward again. His voice echoed through the night, shaking though it was. "You'll have to go through me first." The abductors hissed louder, their strange voices rising in fury. One leapt forward, its glowing weapon swinging down. Daniel ducked, the heat searing his skin. He rammed the branch upward, striking the creature's chest. It shrieked, stumbling back. For the first time, Daniel saw fear in its eyes. The others paused. Their glowing weapons hummed, ready to fire. Daniel knew he could not last much longer. His arms ached. His lungs burned. Yet he stood tall. His body was weak, but his spirit refused to break. Behind him, the girl's glow grew stronger. Her silver eyes lit up the clearing like stars. Energy pulsed from her trembling hands. The ground shook faintly. Daniel glanced back, his fear mixing with awe. She was gathering strength. She was preparing to fight. The hunters realized too late. They lunged forward, but Daniel threw himself in their path. His branch cracked, splintering against their weapons. His body took the brunt of their fury, yet he stood firm. Every second he held them back was a victory. Every heartbeat was a gift of time. The girl cried out, her voice rising in a strange melodic tone. Light burst from her hands, sweeping across the clearing. The abductors screamed, their glowing eyes dimming as they stumbled back. Daniel collapsed to one knee, his strength gone, but he smiled. He had done it. He had given her the chance. The clearing glowed with silver light. The hunters retreated into the shadows, their voices sharp with rage. The girl fell beside Daniel, her small hand resting on his arm. Her silver eyes glistened with tears. She whispered softly, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing hard. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He did not know if they would survive the night. But he had made his choice. He had stood his ground, and in that choice a human had defied the darkness. The silver light faded slowly from the clearing. The girl's glow dimmed and her fragile body swayed as if the effort had drained her completely. Daniel caught her before she collapsed. His arms shook with exhaustion, but he refused to let her fall. The forest was silent for a moment. The abductors had been pushed back, their shadows retreating into the trees, but Daniel knew it was not over. They had not given up. They would return, stronger, faster, and more determined than ever. He looked at the girl. Her glowing eyes blinked weakly, her breath shallow. She was fading. She had power, yes, but she could not hold it for long. Not in her condition, not alone. Daniel clenched his jaw. He could not stay here. If they waited, the abductors would surround them. This was only a pause, not safety. They needed to move. They needed to run. "Hold on," he whispered. His voice was raw, his throat burned, but he forced the words out. The girl looked at him, her eyes full of trust, and she gave a faint nod. Daniel pulled her close and moved into the forest again. His legs were heavy, his body battered, but his will carried him forward. The night seemed darker now. The trees, closing in like walls. The moonlight barely touched the ground. Behind them came the sound, low and sharp, a clicking rhythm that grew louder. The hunters were coming. Their shadows stretched long across the ground. Their glowing eyes flickered. Between the trees, Daniel's pulse quickened. He tightened his grip on the girl and ran harder. The forest floor was uneven. Roots rose like snakes, branches whipped at his face. Daniel stumbled more than once, but each time he pushed forward, his mind screamed one thought over and over. Keep moving, keep moving. The girl clung to him, her voice weak. She whispered strange sounds, words from another world, though he could not understand them. Still he felt her fear, her pain, and her desperate hope that he would not stop. A sudden beam of blue light tore through the trees. It struck a fallen log ahead, splitting it in, half with a hiss. Flames flickered briefly, then died. Daniel's heart leapt in his chest. They were firing again. They were close. He ducked, dragging the girl down with him. Another beam scorched the air above their heads. The smell of burned earth filled his nose. He coughed, choking on the heat. His body screamed for rest, but the danger pressed him onward. They crawled through a tangle of bushes, branches scratching at their skin. Daniel's clothes ripped and dirt smeared across his face. But he did not care. Every step was survival. Every movement was another second stolen from the hunters. The clicking grew louder. The abductors were spreading out. Their shadows moved on both sides, surrounding them. Daniel's chest tightened. Panic clawed at him. He had no plan, no path. But he refused to stop. Ahead, the forest dipped into a narrow ravine. A shallow stream glistened in the faint moonlight. Daniel dragged the girl into the water. The cold shocked him, but he pressed on. The stream muffled their steps, carrying them forward with quiet splashes. The hunters paused at the edge, their glowing eyes scanning. The water hid their tracks. For a moment at least, Daniel prayed it would be enough. He moved as quickly as he could, each step slippery, his arms heavy from holding the girl. The stream twisted and turned. The night air chilled his skin. His breath came in ragged gasps. The girl rested her head against his chest, too weak to stand. Daniel felt her heartbeat fast but fading. His chest ached at the thought of losing her. A sudden roar of energy split the air. A blast struck the stream behind them. Water exploded upward, spraying across the trees. Daniel stumbled, nearly falling. The abductors had found them again. He pushed harder. His feet slipped against the rocks, but he refused to fall. The girl stirred weakly, her silver eyes flickering. She whispered again, her voice soft but urgent. Daniel did not know what she said, but he felt the weight of her plea. Another blast tore through the trees to his left. Bark splintered and rained down. The forest lit up in flashes of blue. Daniel's lungs screamed for air, his muscles burned. He was at his limit, but the thought of the girl's trust pushed him further. Finally, the stream opened into a small cave beneath a cliff. The mouth was hidden by hanging vines and rocks. Daniel stumbled inside, pulling the girl with him. The darkness swallowed them, cool and silent. He pressed her gently against the wall and crouched beside her. His chest heaved, sweat dripped down his face. Outside, the hunters' shadows moved past. Their glowing eyes scanned the forest, but they did not see the cave. Not yet. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. His body trembled. His mind reeled with exhaustion, but he could not rest. He knew they would not give up. They would search, they would find, and the chase would begin again. The girl's hand touched his. Her skin was cool, her grip weak but steady. Daniel looked at her, and in her eyes he saw more than fear. He saw trust, a belief in him that he did not even hold in himself. And in that moment he made a promise, not with words but with resolve. He would keep moving. He would not let the darkness take her. No matter how far, no matter how long, he would keep running. Outside, the clicking began again, louder, sharper. The hunters were close. The night was not over. The chase had only just begun. The cave was dark, damp, and cold. Water dripped slowly from the ceiling, creating soft echoes that filled the silence. Daniel leaned against the rough wall, his chest heaving with every breath. The girl rested beside him, her glowing eyes faint but steady. Her strength was nearly gone, but there was still light inside her. Outside, the forest stirred with unnatural sounds. The clicking and humming of the abductors grew louder. There, shadows passed across the cave's entrance, glowing eyes scanning through the night. Daniel held his breath, pressing low against the wall. He prayed the darkness would hide them, but deep inside he knew the hunters would not give up. Minutes stretched like hours. Each sound made Daniel's heart pound harder. The girl clutched his arm with her fragile hand. He looked at her and whispered softly, "We'll make it out." His voice was rough, his body shaking. But he forced the promise out. Even if he doubted it, she needed to hear it. The shadows stopped. A faint hum filled the air. Blue light flickered at the entrance. Daniel's chest tightened. They had found the trail. The abductors stepped forward, tall and monstrous. Their strange weapons glowed, casting cold light across the stone walls. Daniel's mind raced. He had no strength left to run, no time to hide. The cave was a dead end. There was only one choice left: to fight. His body was weak, but his will hardened like steel. He would not let them take her. He would stand until his last breath. He helped the girl sit against the wall. Her silver eyes shimmered weakly as she looked at him. She whispered something in her language, soft and broken, though he could not understand. He placed his hand gently over hers. "Stay strong," he whispered. Then he stood, facing the entrance. The abductors entered the cave. Their glowing eyes burned through the dark. Their tall, thin frames twisted unnaturally as they moved. Daniel picked up a jagged stone from the ground. His grip was tight, his arms shaking. It was all he had, but it would have to be enough. The first hunter raised its weapon. Blue light hummed as it prepared to fire. Daniel lunged forward, swinging the stone with all his strength. The blow struck its arm, knocking the weapon aside. A blast of energy scorched the cave wall, sparks flying. Daniel staggered, but did not stop. He swung again, forcing the creature back. The others hissed, their voices sharp and metallic. They spread across the cave, closing in from both sides. Daniel's chest burned, his muscles screamed, but he planted his feet and raised the stone again. His voice echoed through the cave, defiant. "You'll have to kill me first." One hunter rushed forward. Daniel ducked under its strike, slamming the stone against its leg. It howled, sparks flickering where he hit. Another swung its weapon, grazing his shoulder. Pain shot through him, but he refused to fall. He pushed forward, shoving the creature back. The cave shook with every blast. The walls glowed faintly as beams of energy scorched them. Daniel dodged left and right, his body moving on instinct. Fear kept him sharp. Desperation gave him strength. Every second he held them off was another second for the girl, another chance for survival. Behind him, the girl stirred. Her silver eyes flared with light. She raised her trembling hands. Energy flickered between her fingers. Daniel felt the cave vibrate with her power. She was gathering strength again. The abductors noticed. Their glowing eyes turned toward her. Daniel's chest tightened. They would kill him to get to her. He stepped in their path, swinging wildly, blocking every strike he could. His body burned, his vision blurred, but he refused to move aside. A hunter struck him across the chest. Daniel gasped, falling to his knees. The stone slipped from his hand, pain exploded through him. His body screamed to give up, but when he looked back and saw the girl, her silver eyes glowing brighter, he found the strength to rise again. He stood with nothing but his fists, his body broken, yet his spirit unshaken. He punched, kicked, shoved, anything to slow them down. Each strike was weak, but his will made it powerful. The abductors hissed in frustration, their glowing weapons sparking as they tried to cut him down. Then a cry filled the cave. The girl's voice, sharp and strong. Her hands burst with light. Silver energy erupted, flooding the cave with brilliance. The abductors screamed, their forms bending and twisting as the light struck them. Their glowing eyes dimmed, their bodies shook violently, and then, one by one, they staggered back, retreating into the night. The cave shook with the force of her power. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. His body trembled with exhaustion. The girl fell against him, her silver glow fading slowly. But she was alive. She had driven them back. They were safe, at least for now. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. His body ached, his skin burned. But a faint smile touched his lips. He had stood against monsters from another world, and he had not broken. He had fought not for glory, not for power, but to protect. The night outside was quiet again. The hunters had been driven into the shadows, but Daniel knew they would return. This was not the end. Yet for this moment they had survived. Together, human courage and alien strength had won the night. And in that cave, battered and bleeding, Daniel realized something. Humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or power. It was the will to fight for what was right, even when defeat seemed certain. The cave was silent after the battle. Only the soft drip of water echoed against the stone walls. Daniel sat slumped against the cold ground, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. His arms shook, his body bruised, yet his eyes stayed open, watching the alien girl beside him. Her silver glow had dimmed, but it had not vanished. She lay against his side, breathing slowly, her fragile form trembling with exhaustion. Daniel placed a hand gently on her shoulder, feeling the cool smoothness of her strange skin. She stirred faintly, her glowing eyes fluttering open. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. No words, no shared language, only the silent bond that had been forged through fire and fear. Daniel smiled weakly. "We're still here," he whispered. His voice cracked, but his heart was steady. The girl's lips curved faintly as if she understood. Outside, the night was still heavy with danger. The abductors had retreated, but Daniel knew it was not the end. They would return, their hunger unbroken. But for now, the forest was calm, the silence almost peaceful. Daniel forced himself to stand. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He looked toward the cave's mouth where faint moonlight spilled through. He could not stay here. If they remained, the hunters would find them again. He needed to move, to lead her somewhere safer. He bent down and helped the girl rise. Her legs were weak, but she leaned on him. Together they stepped out of the cave. The forest greeted them with shadows and silence. The air was cool, the moon high above. They walked slowly, each step heavy, but Daniel felt lighter somehow. His fear was still there, but beneath it was something new. Purpose. He was not just running anymore. He was protecting, guarding life that had been placed in his hands. As they moved, the girl lifted her head and pointed to the sky. Daniel followed her gaze. The stars shimmered brightly above, vast and endless. For the first time that night, he felt wonder instead of fear. She whispered something in her strange language, her voice soft and melodic. He could not understand, yet he felt its meaning. She was speaking of home. Daniel's chest tightened. He realized then. She was far from her world, lost, hunted, and alone. And he was the only one standing between her and those who wanted to take her back. His life had been ordinary before, but now it was tied to something much greater. They reached a hill at the edge of the forest. From there, Daniel could see the town in the distance, small lights glowing faintly. His heart stirred. For a brief second, he imagined taking her there, hiding her among people. But he knew better. The abductors would search, and nowhere on Earth would be safe forever. The girl leaned against him, her silver eyes soft but steady. She trusted him completely. Daniel had never felt such weight, and yet it gave him strength. He was only one man, but she looked at him as if he was enough. The night grew colder. A faint hum in the distance reminded him the hunters were still searching. Daniel clenched his fists. He knew what he had to do. He could not hide forever. He had to face them again. He had to be ready. The girl reached up and touched his chest with her small hand. A faint glow passed between them, warm and steady. Daniel blinked in surprise. His pain eased, his strength returned slightly. It was as if she had shared a piece of herself with him, a gift of trust and hope. He looked at her in awe. His voice was soft but firm. "We'll fight together." She tilted her head, then gave a faint nod. Her silver eyes shone brighter for a moment, and Daniel felt a fire awaken inside him. The forest behind them stirred. The clicking began again, sharper, louder. The hunters were returning. Daniel took a deep breath. His fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. He was ready. He guided the girl to stand tall beside him. Her glow pulsed faintly. His heart beat steady. They were two against many, but together they were stronger than either alone. The night sky stretched wide. Above them, the stars watched silently. The abductors' shadows moved closer, glowing eyes cutting through the dark. Daniel lifted a broken branch, his makeshift weapon. His voice rang out into the night, steady and fearless. "You won't take her." The girl's light flared, silver energy dancing across her hands. The abductors hissed, their weapons glowing brighter. The ground trembled beneath their approach, and, in that moment, standing side by side, human and alien, Daniel understood something powerful. Humanity's strength was not in weapons nor in power, but in heart, in the stubborn will to fight for what mattered, even against the impossible. The abductors closed in, the air humming with their fury. But Daniel did not step back. The girl did not falter. Together they stood as one. The battle was not finished. The night was not yet won. But the bond they shared had already created something the hunters could never break, a bond beyond worlds.